I want to thank everyone for joining us. I know that for some people, given the fact that we're all over the world, this is a slightly different time and maybe not the most perfect time for your day. However, we appreciate that everyone is joining us here today, and we wanted to let everyone know that we are actually recording this. So if anyone's not able to be here, or you do have to go out at any point, we can ensure that you can actually still catch this. And so I want to start by setting us up a little bit with what the plan is for today, and then I'm going to start introducing people so that you know who's actually here with you. So as I've said, my name is Mike Tanner, and I'm the Director of Communications at Divine Renovation. We have joining with us, and they should be able to unmute their video. I don't know if unmute video is the proper word for this, but they should be able to turn on their video now at this point. And so we have joining with us as well, Fiona O'Reilly, who is the Director of Global Strategy for Divine Renovation. And she is also a coach that works with St. Benedict Parish. And we're also really happy to have with us today two individuals from St. Benedict Parish. First off, we have Pastor Father Simon Lobo, and we also have Laura O'Rourke, who is in charge of, or the director, or working with children's ministries at St. Benedict Parish. So first off, welcome everyone, and thanks for being here. We do have the only people that you'll be able to physically hear during this call are the panelists, who are myself, Fiona, Laura, and Father Simon. However, you do have a Q&A option that's here as well, which actually lets you ask questions that you need answers to. Hello, Fiona.
Hi, guys.
Father Simon, I'm hoping, is going to be able to get online here in a second with video.
There we go. Hey-o.
There we are.
All righty.
Last but not least, we should have Laura here in a second.
There. Hi.
There we go. Okay. Everyone is online. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. As I've sort of said, as I've stumbled through us getting everything set up, one of the things that we're realizing is this is a new reality for a lot of us. And this is our actual first time using the Zoom webinar option. So we've used Zoom in our coaching for quite a long time, but this is the first time that we've done it this way. And so we appreciate everyone for taking some patience and having some patience with us during this process. So maybe we're going to get started today with, I'm going to ask everyone to sort of introduce themselves a little bit. I've told them a little bit who you are, but maybe we'll start with Fiona and go from there as to who are you and why are you joining us today?
Sure. Well, look, delighted to be here, Mike, and just so pleased so many of you from around the world could join us in our unprecedented times. My name is Fiona O'Reilly. I am the Director of Global Strategy for Divine Renovation. I joined the team about heading for a year ago now, after 25 years in management consulting. And I'm also fortunate enough to coach a number of our parishes, including St. Benedict, but also some in the United States and one in India.
Very nice. And a man who I don't believe needs a lot of introduction for everyone who's on here, but certainly some that this is a new face for them, Father Simon Lobo.
Hey, Mike. Good to see everybody. My name is Father Simon Lobo. I'm the pastor at St. Benedict. And as you can see, there's a wonderful sheen coming off my bald head right now on this webinar. So I was actually hoping the video wouldn't work, but anyways, here we are. You got to look at me now, but it's great to be with you.
Thanks for joining us. And we also have joining us Laura O'Rourke.
Hey guys, my name's Laura. I am the Children's Ministry Director over at St. Benedict Parish. I'm really excited to be here today. This is going to be a great chat.
That's awesome. Well, the reason obviously things are changing at such an incredible speed right now as we look to try and pastor through parishes and how to support parishes during a time when obviously worldwide is incredibly difficult. And so what we wanted to do through the course of today's conversation is, first off, talk a little bit about, okay, what happened and where are we at? Well, how do we feel about that? And then sort of get some of those things out in the air as to what it's like to be in this state right away. And then to start to walk through some of the things that we've done and some of the things that we believe we can do in order to continue to move forward with the mission of the church and on our case in Divine Renovation with our mission to inspire and equip parishes to be missional.
We should open in prayer.
Absolutely. Would you mind leading us in that, Father Simon?
For sure. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Jesus, we love you. We adore you. We are here because of you. You're the center of everything. You're our first love. And we want to be focused on you in this time together. We ask that whatever shared would be done so in humility, and that we'd be a group learning together about how to respond in unprecedented times. We pray for the whole world as we're a microcosm gathered together here on this webinar, and for the church universal throughout the world, that we would continue to be a beacon of hope in these times of crisis. Please bless each one of us here as we share, and our listeners and viewers. Bless them and all of the churches that they represent around the world. We make this prayer in Jesus' most holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Holy Spirit. Amen.
I wanted to actually start with you, Father Simon, and maybe have you share with us a little bit about what has the last week looked like for you. And a little bit of context that we want to say is just the idea of that we in Nova Scotia are facing this particular time where we're at in terms of our how we're dealing with things is at a certain space and time. So some people may not be where we're at, or maybe past where we're at in terms of what's available, what's open, social gatherings, etc. But maybe you could share with us what the last week has looked like for you in terms of a response from St. Benedict Parish.
Sure. Yeah. I was reflecting on the story, and so many things have changed so quickly that it's hard for me to even remember where I was even a week ago. I think back to a week ago Monday, so whatever that was, March the 9th, perhaps, I found out that Divine Renovation was going to be canceling the DR20 conference. And I thought to myself, oh boy, well, yes, yeah, better safe than sorry. That's a good idea. And then 3 days later, I was like, there's no way that we could possibly have a global conference inviting people from all over the world to Halifax. It's just impossible. And so anyways, I was, for myself personally, I was planning to fly to Detroit, in fact, this past Monday for meetings with my religious community, the Companions of the Cross. We had some extended meetings planned. So I was going to fly from Halifax, Nova Scotia to Detroit, Michigan. And it became, as the week went on, it became more and more clear, this is probably not going to happen. And I think it was Friday, the Premier of Nova Scotia announced that there were some restrictions. I think at that point it was limits to
150.
Was it 150? Yeah. And so 150 recommended gatherings, things like that. And so we were waiting on pins and needles to see what was directives we were going to get from the Archdiocese. And so the Archdiocese of Halifax Yarmouth did follow up saying, basically, for this last weekend, March 14, 15, we're going to go ahead and have masses. And then after that, as of Monday, no more masses or liturgical gatherings, really any gatherings in our churches from Monday the 16th onwards. And so we had a little bit of time in that we could meet with our people one last time for those who wanted to come. And so on the one hand, we have 4 weekend masses at St. Benedict. And so right away we were trying to decide how can we gather together and make sure that we're being really careful. Everybody come together, we're a community, but no touchy, like no sign of peace. No, we try to be a warm, welcoming community. And so, hospitality teams, all that sort of stuff. It's like no handshakes, and try to keep distancing, all that sort of thing. And then in real time, we're trying to figure out, so what do we do? And it was actually, so Fiona's been coaching me and our team at St. Benedict. And so it was actually Dan O'Rourke from DR who sent me an email with just some suggestions for some of the things that the DR office, some of the measures that they had in place. And it was wonderful. And I have to admit, I was like reading this Sunday afternoon, still trying to make it through the weekend, having just gone through a flurry of communication and decision-making. By Sunday night, Fiona said, you know what, I'm available. And so we got on an ad hoc coaching session, and she was just like, okay, we need to do this. Have you thought of this? Okay, what about this? And I'm just like, at that point, all I had done is I had done a bit of a brain dump into a Google spreadsheet to say, here are all the things I can possibly think of in terms of ministries that need to be communicated to, things that will have to be shut down, whether everything from Stations of the Cross to a big gathering for a Lenten reconciliation with a drama, things like that. And so I was just on fumes at that point. So grateful for Fiona, but I mean, she'll tell you herself partway through that call, I was just like, okay, I think I'm done. Like, I'm literally, I've hit the wall. I'm at the fatigue point. And why don't you pick it up, Fiona, and tell a bit from your perspective?
Well, look, as we coach parishes around the world, we have this weird stop motion photography feeling going on, because we've got parishes who are already through this. We've got parishes who went through it last weekend in the UK, with parishes literally making the switch as we speak, and others still to come. But one of the things that always happens when you're leading in crisis is, how do you just make the problem simple enough you can think well about it? And so one of the things we've been sharing with our teams is, look, there are 3 buckets of stuff to think about here. The first is, for you as a team to get really clear, what is your vision for what the next 2-3 months are going to look like? What's a win? What's success going to look like? How are we going to be a missional church in this completely new time? And then how do we as a team organize ourselves around that, moving people to remote working, who needs to be in the office, who doesn't? How do we shut down the front desk well? How are we going to handle the practicalities around kind of funerals, baptisms, all that kind of thing? The second thing is, as a parish, how is this going to work? How do we encourage prayer, community? How are we going to make the sacraments available if we still can, and in what form? Will we keep the building open for private prayer? And how are we going to communicate relentlessly through as many channels as possible to reach as many people as possible? And then the last thing is mission field. How are we going to look outwards? Because we are still a missional church. We exist to help people meet the love of Christ, and that's never been more needed. So how do we live that? How do we incarnate that on the street, at the front door, as we're helping neighbors who are isolating, going shopping, whatever it may be? How do we start to, right from the beginning, have an outward posture that's focused on sharing the gospel? And so those 3 buckets, kind of the team, the parish, the mission field, were what we just used to help structure the thinking, so that then with each of the teams we're coaching, we could break that down to really practical, okay, how are we going to do this step by step over the next couple of days? So I guess I'll let you pick up the story of what the step by step looked like, Father Simon.
Well, you know what? Even before I do that, I'm going to take a step by step backwards. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge, like, if there's any other leaders out there, and I suspect there's a lot listening in or watching. This is for me. So this is my first global pandemic. So just putting that out there,
How careless of you.
So I don't want to scandalize anybody, but I have no idea what to do. Like, I really don't. I mean, we're making this up. There's no playbook for this. And so if there's anybody out there who's feeling overwhelmed or, like you don't know what to do, for myself, I've just been trying my best. And if I'm being really honest, my tendency is to underreact to these sorts of things. And I was pretty slow to respond. And I've been talking to different people over the last little bit, and some who are very critical, I would say, of leaders. And just to say, you know what, we need to be praying like mad for the people who are in leadership positions, whether they're secular leaders, governments, medical leaders, church leaders, bishops, and as well as pastors. Like, we just need to be praying, because if you're like me at all, you're just feeling like, I don't exactly know what to do, but I'm willing to step into the gap. And so I just want to acknowledge that from the outset. And so anyways, that's just I know that's kind of a sidebar. I don't know where we were. Somebody else.
That's okay. I don't think anyone knows where we're at. And I think one of the things that's important in this, Father Simon, is, as you pointed out, it's not like we can go, oh, I've gone through a global pandemic, so I'll go ahead and let everybody know what they should and shouldn't be doing. And so I think that there's a lot of uncertainty. I think that's what you've really spoken into, is this concept of, look, we are being, there's lots of criticism right now going around about how different organizations have dealt with this, how churches have dealt with this, how leaders politically, business-wise have dealt with this. And I think it's important for us to realize, like, this is difficult. This isn't just a normal, it's not business as usual. And so it's important that we don't treat it as business as usual while we still do the things that we need to do. Before I bring Laura into the conversation a little bit here, I did want to once again say that I've got the chat panel open on the side here, and there's all these wonderful conversations and all these people from all over the world. It's really awesome to see. We also have a Q&A panel. So if you click on Q&A and you have a specific question that you'd like answered, you can post that in here during this, and that gives us a chance to basically answer you as we go. And this is going to be a very fluid thing that we're going to be doing. So the next thing, Laura, in your perspective, as being someone who's a not the pastor, but a leader in your church, what does it look like for you in terms of being a leader in ministry and working with your team over this last period of time?
Yeah, I was reflecting today actually just how wild it's been over the last week, because I remember a week ago today was the last day of school before March break, and in the morning, I sent my kids to school and I assumed it was going to be things as normal. By the time I picked the kids up from school, I thought, yeah, they might not be back at school right away. And by the end of the weekend, and certainly by this point, I'm like, yeah, I don't know when they're going to be going back to school. So that's how fast this has gone. For me, it really felt that way in ministry as well. It sort of was, because for us, I think there's a lot of people who weren't able to do church maybe in the United States last Sunday, but I think our number actually for the weekend was 250, not 150 at first, and then it lowered to 150. And so we were able to do weekend services last week, Mass, but we expected lower numbers, and we did get lower numbers. And yeah, so Saturday I threw out all of my plans for Sunday children's ministry and started fresh. And I just thought, okay, what do the kids who are coming, who are going to be away from our community, fit in this face-to-face same room mentality? What do I want to equip them with right now in this period of time going forward? And so I changed up what we were talking about. We stopped our series. We started talking about fear and anxiety and how God can speak into that. And then I created, I found this, a couple of resources for parents on how to help their kids walk through anxiety during this time, and created as fast as I could without having any time to strategize, just some ideas about how they as a family could connect with us as a church going forward, and with a couple other resources to just keep them rooted into faith while the church building, in a sense, is closed for Sundays. And that would still allow us time to strategize going forward, but it was just the very fast, like, what can we do now? How can we equip the people at least we're going to see now? So yeah, it's been a ride for sure.
Yeah, I think the starting point that we're all coming from is such an interesting thing, because it's, Laura, you have children. I have two kids as well. And we went through the exact same experience on the weekend of like, guys, we might not have swimming this week. And then like, guys, we might be indoor for the foreseeable future. And so trying to manage that was challenging for us. So let's talk a little bit about next steps. So let's talk about, we've talked a little bit about what was the initial rush like. What did we do in the beginning? But one of the things that we've really focused on at Divine Renovation, and I'm going to ask Fiona to speak into this a little bit, is how do you ensure that what you're doing is still on priority and on point when there are probably a million things you could be doing that you're suddenly trying to figure out all the different directions you're being pulled in? So maybe Fiona, you could speak into that a little bit for us.
Sure. And look, this has been a wild journey for the past 10, 11 days. I was reflecting this morning. 12 days ago, we were cancelling a global conference. Kind of 10 days ago, we announced that publicly. 8 days ago, we started to work with parishes around, okay, so you're shutting down. What does that look like? And also in tandem as a ministry going, oh, we have to move to remote working too. We better figure that one out. And we do quite a lot of remote working already, but we were behind the eight ball. We were very much scrambling. And so over the weekend, we had this sudden acceleration in Nova Scotia in particular around, everyone to remote working, and that just hit really fast. So Monday morning, we sort of, walked into our respective kitchens. Everyone kind of booted up their laptops and went, right, this is where we are. And so it was and that was off the back of a Sunday kind of, conference call kind of with SBP on the parish there. So we really, as a ministry, for kind of first 2-3 days of this week, just kind of found our feet with the normal of people working remotely. We figured out, what does that start to look like? And we discovered what lots of people are talking about at the moment, which is people are passionate about wanting to make an impact and do the right thing. But the more distributed you are, the more everyone is remote working, the easier it is for that to turn into sideways energy and the scattergun effect where everyone's trying to do everything. And so we've kind of over the last couple of days, we've quickly regrouped the team to say, let's get back to why we exist. If you're a parish, we exist to make disciples. That's our identity as church. And so that's still our fundamental call. That call didn't change. The end of the gospel didn't change because of last weekend or a pandemic. For us as a ministry, our mission is to inspire and equip parishes to be missional. And what we've been going through with the team over the last sort of 48 hours is that's never been more true. And so being clear about the mission with everyone in the parish, being clear as an organization for us what our mission is. And then we've said, look, that means we'll do 3 things and we'll try to do them as well as we possibly can over the coming weeks. We will inspire and equip parishes to be missional in a new virtual world. We will continue to support as best we can and as brilliantly as we can the parishes who we've got the privilege to coach and to serve through our Divine Renovation network. And we will keep this organization a healthy, well-functioning organization so that we're attentive to our staff and to how we're working together as human beings. And those 3 priorities and that one mission will be our North Star. That will focus everything we do. And so I think, as we all turn to, just uncharted waters over the next couple of months, one thing that really helps in crisis is getting really clear and relentlessly communicating, why are we here? And then what are the priorities in light of that why? Because then people have something to steer by. They've something to prioritize by. They've something to rally around. And that starts to contain the sideways energy. It starts to help people be really clear for themselves around how to direct their work, and they're having to be much more independent sometimes in how they're working now, and much less opportunity to just check in by sticking your head over the desk. And so that will really help us have that sort of North Star to steer by.
So before we get in with, I'd like to have Father Simon speak a little bit about at the parish level what that has, but we've also got just a ton of questions that are coming up now. I've opened the floodgates by suggesting that people actually use the Q&A feature, and it's always like, oh, this is great. Ooh, this is a lot. So I wanted to quickly answer a few of them so that we can continue to work through, because we want to let people know we are working on them. So one of the first things that we have here is that someone says, we're introducing live streaming of Mass for the first time. We're aiming to implement this from this form for all Easter services. Any suggestions or useful tips that it goes as smoothly as possible? So the fact of the matter is there's lots of suggestions and useful tips for it. And our team actually is working right now with St. Benedict to continue to improve their live streaming options and working at a diocesan level as well to see how we can help our local. What I would say in this particular one, because it's going to be hard to get into that technical conversation at this point, and there is a little bit of technical capacity there, is that to basically email us directly, communications@divinerenovation.org, and I'll put you in touch with the team member on our team who can actually give you some really actionable advice. And that's going to be the best use of our time in this particular way. The next thing that I wanted to say is this is someone saying, can you share your resources on anxiety and worry for children? So Laura, this is directed to you. Do you have a place where people can go, or could we get them in touch with you for a resource package if that's the case?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, it's like at this point, I'm just compiling a whole bunch. I don't have a place for it at the moment, but I'm actually searching as we speak to get those links. I'm on my husband's computer at the moment, so nothing's as like right at my fingertips, but I will definitely post it in the chat a couple times when I get them up. And then, yeah, I'm available as well afterwards. Laura O at stbenedict.ca if anyone wants to email and actually get a couple of those. Yeah.
Perfect. There's a couple more that I'm not going to dig into right now, but hopefully we'll get to them as we go through here. But Father Simon, so we've talked about a little bit about at DR, what it's looked like to get going with this. But what has it looked like on the parish? Like, what's the message that you're giving to the parish in terms of how you're carrying on during this time?
All right. Well, Lots of thoughts. One is I'll just jump on the question about live stream, not from a super technical point of view, but just as a priest, as a presider. Four things I'll throw out as special moments, and just think of the four main songs at Mass, like the opening song, the offertory, the communion, and then the recessional. So those are moments to offer particular tailored messages to all the people who are tuning in, because this is a first for many people to be watching Mass, kind of as shut-ins or something like that, not being able to be physically present. So one is just a really warm welcome. It speaking to the cameras, acknowledging, hey, there's people who are here and we love you. And this is a real connection. Like, we are praying together. This is not just a fake thing. Like, Mass is really happening. And though we're physically separated, we're connected in Christ, in this special spiritual network, the community of saints. And so that's one. At the offertory, I think it's a time, and I know that there's going to be more in-depth webinars to come about giving, but I think it's an opportunity to speak about at the offertory about online giving, other ways to give. That's going to be, I'm sure, a major concern to anybody who's sitting in my chair. How do we keep funding this mission? And to really acknowledge the offertory is a real moment to offer of ourselves to be part of the sacrifice, which includes our financial giving. And then at communion, this is, again, a new reality for many people, but to understand spiritual communion, this simple desire, simple prayer to say, hey, Jesus, I love you, and I long to receive you in this sacrament, but that's not possible. I long instead then to experience an intimacy with you right now in this moment spiritually. And then finally at the end of Mass to send people off, again, with a blessing and perhaps a sense of, hey, here's what's next. Coming up at our next online event is going to be, for example, we just were able to celebrate the Feast of St. Joseph on March 19th. And so we live streamed that weekday Mass, that solemnity, and then said, join us for Sunday Mass. That's going to be our next moment. So those are just a few quick pointers off the top about live stream from a priest or presider perspective.
Just one thing. Well, so I'll read you the question in a second. It's okay. There's a lot going on. So one thing I will add to that, and this is something we talked about in a recent podcast when we were talking with Father James about how to do these kind of things, is one of the things is great video is great. It's nice to be able to see really clearly, but some people don't have that as an option right now in their parishes. But the big thing is audio, is really to make sure that people can hear what you are saying. So what we've kind of talked about is like, yes, lean into video, but make sure that people can hear you, because if they can't, that's, they're missing out on something. So Father James made the comment that 80% of video is audio, and our video editor was like, I don't like that answer, but he also acknowledged the idea that, we need to be able to hear these things. So Father, the question was, during this time, what are the things you're doing? So pray, protect, like, what are the messages? How are you continuing to lead the parish specifically in the messaging that you're sharing with your parish? Right.
So in the lead up, by the way, I just want to say as well, my staff has been incredible. You got Laura here on with us, but everybody on the team has just risen to the occasion. And it's such a gift to lead out of a team. I've got a great leadership team surrounding me. And so there's all kinds of communication we were planning with the help of Matt, our communication director, to go out in our Friday, what we call the overview. And I thought, we're good. We put out a bunch of links to all the important stuff. And it was, here's what's going on in Canada, Nova Scotia, the Archdiocese, whatever. And so we figured, okay, parishioners have all the information at their fingertips. We've done our job. And if you happen to come to church this weekend, there won't be holy water fonts, there won't be, sign of peace, all this stuff. And it was a parishioner who I really trust and turn to for advice. And I think, again, most church leaders will have people like that in their pews, who on Saturday were on a phone call, and he just said to me, people need to hear from you. And I was like, well, no, but they did. Like, we already just put out all this stuff. He's like, no, but they need to hear from you, Father Simon. And it's like, and then he used examples of CEOs of corporations, presidents of of countries, etc. And he just said, people need to hear a personal message from you. And I was like, oh, okay. And so that was my Saturday, where I drafted a letter, which you can find on our St. Benedict website. I think it's stbenedict.ca/coronavirus, I think is the link. So a bunch of stuff is there. But I wrote a personal letter to the parishioners, and it ended up being a bit of a vision, I suppose, for how do we live in these times? Because so many people, what I realized, are living paralyzed by fear. And fear does all kinds of nasty things to us. Laura's already spoken about that. And I love what her forward thinking with the kids on this stuff. And so, how one of the questions I raised in the letter was, how should Christians respond differently in times of crisis? And because if we're just glued to the news and focusing on all of our investments tanking and all the negative stuff, we're all going to be depressed. There's no question. And so how do we cling to hope? What are the things concretely we can do to be followers of Christ in the midst of this pandemic? And so I came up with a 3-word pray, protect, pursue. And I just wanted to make it sticky. Pray, protect, pursue. Real simply, pray. We can all continue to be praying, and that brings so much value. There's a power in prayer. We need to pray for the end of this pandemic, pray for all those who are sick, those who have died, those who are caring for those who are sick, and for all leaders. So pray, protect. And this is, again, counter to what you might think. It's not primarily about protecting ourselves. What I wanted to communicate was, though fear turns us inwards, love should turn us outwards. And how do we, again, for myself, I'm fairly young, relatively healthy. I don't personally have grave concern about, whatever, getting sick or dying. And even if I do, I don't have any dependents or whatever. So my life's a lot less complicated than other people. I mean, I'm not pretending like it hasn't crossed my mind, but for the sake of the other people who are very vulnerable, it's an act of love to maintain this proper social distancing and try not to share germs. And I realized that's a whole mental shift for me, because again, my tendency is to underreact to this stuff. So how do I protect other people? And then finally pursue. We still have a mission. We're still at St. Benedict. We talk about forming disciples who joyfully live out the mission of Jesus Christ. We want to be a church that is outward focused, not turned in on ourselves. And so what does that look like? It's gonna have a different feel, because we can't be physically proximate to each other, but phone calls, video chats like this. There's all kinds of creative things. I loved, again, a few of our staff, Kate and Noreen, just on our last weekend, for some of the elderly especially, they said, let's take down names of people who feel either they don't have internet, and so they're like, all of you young people who know what to do and go to the website and follow live stream, we don't even own a computer. What do we do? Well, leave us your phone number. We'll figure out some kind of phone tree to stay connected to you. Or maybe you have an iPad or a computer, but you don't know how to get online. We'll show you how. It's not that hard. And so demystifying some of that stuff. So anyways, those were a few of the key messages from me. Pray, protect, pursue, wanting to stay positive, and again, say, how as Christians can we respond differently?
So I just wanted to, we've got lots of questions, and I've been sort of tagging them as we've been going through on some of them. One of them was specifically, how do we handle, people who don't have, they might not be on Facebook, they might not be on the internet. How do we help people who are on social media? How do we reach out to individuals that are in very different situations? And I think you've spoken into the idea that we do it purposefully. It's not going to happen if we don't put in the effort to do so. And the second part of that being is that we might have to start using our phones for phone calls again. And I know that terrifies everyone, but most of us, when we see, if I have a friend, if my phone rings, and it's a phone call and it's someone I know, my first thought is like, why are you calling me? What is that still a thing? And so I think that we have to realize that for some people, that's going to be the way that we're going to be connecting at this point. So reaching out in whatever means are possible. There was an interesting thing I saw this week where people were actually visiting the elderly from outside of homes. So they were actually saying like, look, I'm going to go to the window and I'm going to wave to my grandmother and I'm going to say hello and I'm going to sort of have that distance. And there's things that, we have to do what's possible for us at this point, wherever it is possible and safe. I think that one of the other things I want to mention before I move on to some stuff with Laura as well is that we think often of, okay, well, if they're not old and they're not really, really sick, then they're probably going to be fine with this. And the truth is that it does impact people that are older more. It does impact people that are sick more, but there are people around us that are heavily compromised in their immune systems that we don't think of. I have a good friend, he does Muay Thai kickboxing. He looks like he's in incredible shape. He also has a bronchial problem that means that this disease this virus would kill him more than likely. And so us not recognizing that just because someone is, young like myself and Father Simon, or of older age, that there's not that there's not that as a possibility. So Laura, I know that one of the things you talked about was thinking outside the box, and that this has forced us to think outside the box in a lot of different ways. Could you speak to maybe a little bit of how this has allowed you to reframe sort of what is possible for you in the area of children's ministries?
For sure. I also wanted to mention just to what you were saying just a second ago as well. And I'm seeing people talk about like people who aren't connected on Facebook or online or whatever. I think it goes back to a point that Father Simon said about leading out of a team. But I think one of the things that is really important with Divine Renovation is to grow your teams, is to have teams in your ministry. And the truth is, where you said, Mike, that, we need to use our phones more and make phone calls. That's so true. But if it's just like one person at the top doing that, it would never get done. This is such a great opportunity, like not to forget that we have teams in our ministries and to continue to empower and equip them to reach out to those people in our church, to let them know that we want to be there for them, ask how we can help, especially people who aren't going to be connected through the online means. It does mean thinking differently. But I think going beyond, I think taking that in the other direction is that this is such an awesome opportunity to think about there's a few things. Like if I had all the time in the world with my ministry, what would I do differently? Or if I was starting over, what would I do differently? All of a sudden we have a little bit of runway here to change things up. No one is coming necessarily weekly to see us in a way that makes it harder for us to break out of our schedule a little bit and do something new and different. And it's also asking us, how can we connect better? I like how Father Simon talked about some of the main points, and Fiona talked about this too, figure out what the main points are. But within that framework, how can we do this differently? How can we reach out to more people? How can this actually be an evangelizing opportunity? Because the reality is so many people are missing and recognizing their lack of community right now. It's easy for church to just feel like a set of, you go here for this amount of time and then you go home and you go off with the rest of your day. And that can just feel like something you add to a calendar. And in our world up until this point, our calendars have already been too full. But we can start reframing it in the people's minds of our communities, not just our church communities, but our communities around us, that we're actually about loving each other and connecting and finding deeper purpose. And so all of a sudden we have an opportunity to think, what does that look like to provide community for our community who are a little bit more isolated now? How can we create community in places where we haven't had the time or the bravery to go online and make community in different places, right? How can we reach out And I think someone asked about like, what if people aren't on Facebook? Like, that's true. We can't just live on one platform in this moment. But this, I think this gives us an opportunity not to say, how can we take everything we've done and just put it into an online context, but how can we take our missional foundations and reach our people and a greater number of people?
I think that at this point, one of the things that's important for us to realize is that, we talk about alpha if you're looking for the answers to life's big questions. Well, right now there's a whole lot of people looking for the answers to life's big questions. And so I think that we have the ability as parishes, as parish leaders, and in our ministry to say, if you're looking for answers, let's go on that journey together and let's go ahead and do that. And I think that people are being driven more and more. It is hard with when you have people who just straight up are not online, that you're not already connected with, or that can be difficult. But there are a lot of people right now that are just living on social media. And I'm not suggesting that's a good thing. I've actually tried to limit some of my time away because it can be a terrifying space right now in some ways. But I think that having the ability to say, Father Simon spoke about this a little bit earlier. We have the opportunity to show what Catholics and Christians are, who we are, and what we do during this time. And so being open to people is a welcoming place where people, I think, are going to say, well, this is something that I think I could lean into. Fiona, I think.
And just to build on that, the whole question around digital alpha, because I see a lot of that coming up in the webinar chat as well. So a couple of things. We've a number of parishes that we journey with. So St. Benedict's Parish are closing out. They're going completely online to finish out their alpha. St. Anne's in Copel, Texas. One of the parishes we coach in Portugal. Around the world, we've got parishes who have already stepped into, in the last sort of week to 10 days, this reality of how do I flip any alpha I am running online so that we can finish it really well. So we'll be looking to share some of the lessons learned from that really quickly through this sort of webinar forum. The other thing is, we recognize as a ministry, this isn't a 3-week problem or an 8 or 12-week reality. Our whole world has just shifted. And I don't know about you, but I'm still feeling a bit of the whiplash. We thought we had, 5, 10, 15 years to evolve a model of church. Yeah, it happened last week. So this is all a bit, we're jumping in, really finding out some of the stuff as we go, but learning from what we're doing quickly with parishes now. We will, in the next 10 days or so, as a ministry, be spinning up a much larger, how do I run alpha digitally from scratch? And we're going to look to do that, working with a whole bunch of parishes around the world. So, if that's something that you've got specific questions on, would like to keep posted on, we're certainly going to want to run some webinars and share what we're learning and invite you into that journey with us. And we were just so excited for this new chance, this new space for conversation, because people are hungry. And as we just said, they have never had the questions be more pressing than now, when all the painkillers are being taken away and stripped away. And we can speak in love into that space and make a huge difference. So we're very excited about the chance to do that, and the chance, hopefully, for some of you to join us in that journey as well as we go large on digital alpha.
Well, one of the things with that as well is we're in the midst of getting that up in a lot of the parishes that we work with, but the feedback we've seen, we've started to see some people online that have started doing alpha online, some people who have started doing just some general community groups online, connect groups online, all these sorts of things. And what we're seeing so far is people going, all right, this isn't what it was, and it's not everything, but it is a chance to stay connected during this time. And so I think that there is a chance for us to work on those communities as we see them. In lots of fields, I have friends that are spinning up these sort of okay, we're going to have a coffee chat, and it's just going to be a Zoom chat like this or something similar. And we're seeing that in so many other spheres. There's absolutely no reason why that should not be employed in the area that we are in right now. There's
a little more intentionality because you need to be more intentional in this moment. And I think that's really cool. One thing I've been thinking about a lot with parents and families is that I've been hearing and thinking and wrestling a lot with the idea that we want to encourage families and parents to be more intentional with the faith of their kids, because so often, people have no doubt who I know personally have heard me say this before, but at churches, we see kids or youth for at most and at best 1 to 2 hours a week, likely even less than that because some of them aren't coming weekly. And yet parents are like, cool, we're taking them to church, that we've got their spirituality covered. And all of a sudden, we have this really cool opportunity in this moment. And I've been saying for a while, like, I really want to figure out how to better equip families to create the soil for a good faith to grow at home. And there's small ways we can do it, but all of a sudden, like, that becomes the entire intentionality of this time, right? I don't have a Facebook connection to the like grade 2 kid in my children's ministry, or the preschooler that we have in children's ministry, but I do have connections to their parents, and parents are feeling much more intentional right now about how to help their kids learn and how to help their kids like be active, and so in that intentionality, we can equip them. So this is one of those opportunities. This is just a small example of how you can see, okay, what have I always wanted to do different? What have I always wanted to try to grow in intentionality in? And here is this perfect opportunity to do that. And so it's one of those ways that we can look differently at this situation.
I really love that idea. We've talked before about the idea that, our kids go off to school for a certain amount of the time during the day, and there's someone else who is teaching them at that point, and they're leaning into their morality and their sensibility and what it is they believe in. And then, they might come to us for a little while, and then they might be at soccer practice or basketball practice or whatever. And I've found with my kids who are 5 and 8, there's some days where it's like, okay, supper. Okay, cool. Now bed. Because that's the only time that I'm really seeing them. And now as parents, we're basically going, all right, you're it. It's you 100% of the time. It's you. And in some cases it might be a grandparent or whatever, who's sort of in your sort of isolated community kind of thing. But that we have the chance now to decide whether or not we are going to teach our kids what we believe and whether we believe those things. And that's a huge part of things right now. We have a few more questions I want to get to. I know we have tons to talk about. And before I answer those, and then before we talk about more things, I wanted to say that the plan is ever evolving, but that our plan is to be doing these more often. Our plan is to be bringing in either people that we're already connected with, DR parishes, et cetera, who are doing these things, and some of our partners, some of the people within our organization that can help people. But also what we're doing right now is reaching out to the people who are doing these things best, because there are people who are doing these things well and have been doing some of these things for a long time well. And for them, it's not a new reality. It's what they've been doing for a long time. So if we don't get to something today, if it's a super specific question, I would ask that you reach out to me. Communications at divinerenovation.org. If it's something because it may be something that we decide, okay, well, our next one is going to be solely focused on that concept. And we want to be incredibly practical with what we do. We talk about the idea that we're here to inspire and equip. And so today there's a lot of inspire. There's a lot of how do we lift each other up? How do we do this? We're going to be spending a lot of time equipping over the next little while. And that's where some of the specific stuff was. So one thing that I wanted to just quickly answer is, could each parishioner buddy up with one another online and be responsible for each other? I don't know whether that's something that parishes are going to do directly, but I would encourage you to speak to your parish about that possibility, because someone else actually asked about, can we share information with people because of online privacy laws? The fact of the matter is you can't really. However, you have the ability as a parish to reach out to your parish and say, this is what we're trying to do. Who would like to volunteer for this system? So there are ways to start those connections. So I'd really I'd really like to do that. The other thing that's a really easy one for us is that we are recording this webinar. The plan is to push this out after the fact. One more thing before we sort of get into the next little thing, and we don't have a lot of time for it, which is why I'm talking incredibly fast, as though I've been drinking coffee for 3 days, which I have. But the last thing is that we've also set up an email address called stories@divinerenovation.org. And what we're looking for here is your parish doing something? Is your pastor doing something? Are you doing something as a parishioner that you'd like us to know about, so that first off, we can highlight it, we can share it with the world? Because our thing at this point is, one of our core values at Divine Renovation is share your chariot. And what that means is lift up the people that are around us, rather than we're not the only people who are doing this well. We're not the only people who are dealing with this reality. And so we really want to lift people up. So if you have something that you want to share with us, please reach out to us and make sure that we actually know about it. And so the ways the team is on board now, this is awesome. You should have on your screen now a way to get in touch with us. What it currently says is .net. This is not entirely accurate. .org is actually what you should be reaching out to for the email addresses. Again, things are moving very quickly here. We've changed email addresses entirely in the course of this. So if you reach out to us on either of these, we'll be able to actually to share your information. The last thing I wanted to have us go over today in the next few minutes, because we would like to get this done by 1 p.m. our time if possible, so we got about 7 minutes, is about remote work. These in general are not offices. I will actually rotate a little bit. That is a bulletin board with my children's stuff. A little bit further is my kitchen. Over here is a downstairs. There's lots going on in the world that I'm in right now in terms of where my office is. And so can we, maybe I'm wondering, Father Simon and Laura specifically, if you can lean into how are St. Benedict going through this process in terms of where are people working, how are people working, and how are you keeping those things on track?
Sure, yeah, I'll jump in. For myself personally, I was actually, those meetings in Detroit ended up being Zoom meetings. So I was with a total of 5 companions of the cross priests for 15 hours of meetings, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then another 4 hours of meetings with priests and clergy from the Archdiocese here in Halifax, Yarmouth on Thursday. And so big shout out to my team, my leadership team at the parish, for all that they've done, all the heavy lifting, Father Alex, Tanya, Rob, Kate, and so many others in getting a plan together and getting the staff going in a direction. But yeah, video conferencing has been a big part of it. And one of my biggest things was like, oh, this is going to be terrible. It's impersonal. It's through technology. And I've found actually, both in my companions meetings and with the priests of the Archdiocese, we got to incredibly vulnerable places. It was shocking to me. And even to the point where there was that, what Patrick Lencioni talks about, that vulnerability-based trust, some of that bonding was starting to happen over a screen. And I think perhaps it's the context in that we're living where everybody is responding to this same crisis. So it's bringing us together. But the other reality is I underestimated what is possible. It's certainly not the same as being in a room together, but it's pretty close. And maybe Laura could speak to a bit of her own experience. She's part of what's called the Disciple Formation Team, which is being led by Tanya, and they've had multiple meetings this week. Go for it, Laura.
Yeah, so we've been meeting over Zoom. We've met done some one-on-one meetings, some like 4 people meetings, some like team meetings together, just sort of playing it out together and practicing to start with what that looks like and how to meet together. And it's been pretty cool. We've been using Zoom, we've been connecting. We also use Slack as a church team to talk within our teams and then as a whole group and things like that. So we're doing our best, I think, to try to keep some normal work routines within the larger setup of our sort of being a little more distant. And I know for Tanya, like you said, who leads our DFT, she really wants to make sure that we're connecting personally, to make sure that we don't lose that individual relationships that's happening. Yeah, and I also think she's also encouraged us, and I think it's so true to set some boundaries in place for what is and what is not work time. That looks like, boundaries of your physical space, boundaries of your time, boundaries of your electronics, which is so helpful just to know, even if people are contacting you night and day, you don't have to work night and day. When it feels like you're never leaving your workspace, you can start creating these unhealthy habits. So it's really good to work a lot, and do the work you're supposed to be doing, but also make sure, especially with kids at home and all the sorts of things, you're also separating from work on occasion too, when it's necessary and healthy. I will also mention, Fiona had a really funny story about my kids. Apparently, I wasn't even part of this story, but there is a reality of having kids when you're working too. And I think that's going to be a reality of a lot of people who are doing work from home, whether you're in church leadership or even if you're just watching and interested in church leadership, but you are also working from home. We have kids, and we're going to have to deal with the realities of that. Apparently, the other day, Fiona was talking to my husband on one of these Zoom calls, and I was having a meeting with my DFT meeting upstairs on a Zoom call, and one of my kids poked their heads in and said one of us needed to get off immediately because we were stealing all the internet bandwidth from their video games. So. You know who the boss is in this house. But Mike said earlier, we are parents in this situation too, and we have become the sole face of their lives at the moment. So we have to continue. We have to really be intentional to love them and care for them, and not be pushing them aside. And so that means that when you're talking to someone with kids, you're going to have to be understanding that there might be some interruptions. Earlier today, as we were talking about this meeting, I had my hand over to the side. I was opening a granola bar for a kid, but I think there's beauty in that too, and being able to invite our worlds into each other, where Father Simon said earlier, it got a little more vulnerable. That is this. We're opening a glimpse of not just what we look like when we go to work and we close off the rest of the world to us at work in our offices, but a glimpse of what our at home looks like, and we're inviting each other into that. So that's an opportunity to connect for sure.
I want to give Father Simon and Fiona a bit of a last word here before we close out. But I did want to say that, the reality is that we are human beings. We are people. Few of us are perfect. As far as I know, none. Haven't met anyone who's perfect yet. And I think that we really need to be patient with one another. I was doing a call with Joe DePenta, who works with us at Divine Renovation. And so I've got my phone facing me, and I was sort of laughing, and he's like, "What are you laughing at?" And I turned my phone around to face the bed where my little office is. And there's two little faces just laying on the bed, just watching me have this meeting. And so, you know what? That's my family, and our parishes are our family. The people around us are our family right now. And those are the people that I'm going to choose to spend my time with while still trying to get everything that I can done. Before I give a couple last words here, I just wanted to reiterate, if I didn't get your question answered, I'm super sorry. There's a lot of questions. Some of them were very technical, and we've sort of noted what they were so that we can use those for future things. Some of them I would suggest that just reach out to me at communications@divinerenovation.org. And we're going to try our best to answer those things. And this is not going to be the last that you've heard of us. But this for today is going to be the last that you're going to hear of Fiona O'Reilly. So Fiona, maybe you could close with some ideas of what you think the next steps are for us.
Sure. So I guess one of our values as a ministry has always been that reliance on the Holy Spirit. And maybe it's stating the obvious, but one thing we've tried to be really intentional about, even as we move to this new reality and remote working, is how do we continue to pray together as a team? How do we kind of start the week and end the week in prayer? How do we begin our meetings individually with prayer? One thing I will say, we had our team prayer meeting this morning. There was 16 plus on us. Do not attempt to sing on a Zoom call with 16 participants. It is horrific. It's a crime against humanity. It sounds so bad. So don't go there. There are other ways of praying. But yeah, so that one thing is being really intentional about leaving space for prayer and making space for prayer as we journey together into this new normal. And I guess probably just kind of three closing thoughts for us as we all try and lead in this new situation. The first is just being really clear about what's our vision in this time. And if as a parish, maybe you're joining and this is all new to you, Divine Renovation is all new to you, you haven't even got a vision yet, you know, the fundamental vision for us as church has always been the same. We exist to share the good news of Jesus Christ and help others to come to know and enter into a transforming relationship with him. That's our heart. That's what we want for people. That's the big vision. And so it's how will that come to life in your parish, in your new normal. That's the first thing to keep laser focused on. The second thing is we've all got one eye to the 3 and 6 month horizon, but actually in this kind of crisis, you can only really plan and execute in a 2-week time frame. So to save all of our sanity, you know, make a big difference between those things. There's the big picture, there's the narrow window for execution, because actually the current rate of change is such you can only plan about 10, 14 days ahead. And you need a bit of a command center mentality where you're checking in much more frequently. And I think the third thing is this is a new reality. There is no going back. We won't go back to the old normal in however many weeks or months time it is when we get together again as physical church. We're in the new reality. And now what we need to do is find out how to be a living church of disciples in that world. So hold on to that.
So this is beautiful, Fiona. This is why we get Fiona to say really nice things, and I mostly crack jokes around the office. So I'd like now to maybe, Father, you can close us out with what would you say to both pastors and parishioners during this time that's going to be what the next steps are for them?
So yeah, it's hard to follow that, but I just jump on that for prayer for one thing, and a really quick Zoom hack that we figured out. If you're going to pray the rosary together as a group over Zoom, mute everybody except for the person speaking and let them pray the beginning and the end of each prayer, and then switch it over to somebody else to lead the next decade. And that really works beautifully. But pray. I've encouraged my staff from the beginning to use even work time. They want to use 30 minutes a day to pray during work hours to go for it. And I've continued to encourage that, especially now in this time of crisis and need. So that's got to be front and center. Secondly is for staff and for pastors, for leaders, this whole remote work culture, and I know there's a whole lot that needs to be said about this, and that's for future webinars, but to avoid the presumption of that cynical, that's saying, you know what, if somebody's working from home, then they're probably just staying in their PJs and they're lazy and they're not doing anything. And I know you're fully dressed, Michael, at least, well, we don't know. I'm going to
prove it. Pants, I actually am. I felt this was important to prove. Okay. I do have pants on.
You're wearing pants. That's great.
I am wearing pants. I felt it was incredibly important to prove.
Good. I appreciate it, to remove all doubt. So, but just to say from both perspectives, to go in with the presumption that people are working and they want to work. And secondly, for anybody who might be tempted not to, or to take a vacation at this time, it's really, really healthy for your own mental well-being to continue working. Get up at the same time that you get up at, eat healthy, work normal hours, take breaks, put your phone into airplane mode at certain times. If there's anything, it's been that tendency for me to feel the burden to communicate and over-communicate, which is so important. I've been on Twitter a lot more in the last week than I have in the last 3 months probably, but at the same time, don't live in that all the time, which I think Laura made that point earlier. And finally, Jesus, as I began with the opening prayer, Jesus is the center. He's number one. And I use this passage in the letter I wrote to the parishioners. It's been speaking to me this Lent, Isaiah 30, verse 15. It actually comes from daytime prayer in the Liturgy of the Hours, this beautiful prayer that, if for those of you out there, you're looking for more ways to pray, you can't pray the Mass. One of the ways that the church offers is something called the Liturgy of the Hours. You can find it. Just download the app iBreviary and find out more. But anyways, the passage is this: by waiting and by calm, you shall be saved. In quiet and in trust, your strength lies. And we go through life with this apparent sense of being in control. We were joking with Fiona. She's a control freak. She's trying to tell me what I needed to say on this webinar and stuff. And as we joke, God loves you and Fiona has a plan for your life. Which is true. Which is true. And I'm so grateful for all of her guidance and wisdom. But this is not something that we're going to be able to power through by our own human strength. We need to trust. We need to obviously use our human wisdom, but we need to rely on God and trust in him. By waiting and by calm, you will be saved. In quiet and in trust, your strength lies. Amen.
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 Well, this has been a beautiful experience for me. It's been so nice to do. It's been so incredible to have so many people join us today and have really important questions that I really hope that we're able to help them with. And over the coming weeks, again, this is not the last you'll see of us. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We will be following up with everyone who was on here today with the opportunity to see the replay. As soon as we know a schedule of what's next. And we ask that any of you please reach out to us. We're on all the major social platforms. So there's our new address. So this is how quick the team is adjusting to this world, is that they're actually changing slides as we go. So you can reach out to us, communications@divinerenovation.org. You can reach us on Twitter @divreno or Instagram and Facebook @Divine Renovation. And if there is a way that we can help you, we want to help you. And as if there's a way that you're helping people already, we want to know about it. So send those emails through to stories@divinerenovation.org. I'd like to thank very much those of you who joined us today, and God bless. Have a wonderful day.